Good thing I'm sober and I didn't do stuff. I'm getting too old to navigate the stairs.
Yes.
Yeah, he's on the park for truck. That's why I have him talking loud, so that people will hear me talking to her.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is the sound okay?
You sound pretty good.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to our March community gathering. My name is Eddie Graham. I'm not sure how I became the greeter, but I got drafted to do that. So it is my pleasure to welcome you, and it is very heartening to see a number of people who are so interested in the future of our beautiful town. I love Clifton Forge, and I know that the people in this room do as well. And it is very appropriate that you get commended for that love. I'd also like to commend 6 individuals tonight. I won't go into detail because I don't want to take away from Chuck Unro's presentation and introduction. But I would like to commend Town Council and the Town Manager for their recent action, which I think is probably one of, if not the most significant action that is crucial for the future revitalization of our town. We have struggled to find a community development director, and I don't know how they did it, but those 6 individuals actually hired an individual who has made Clifton Forge the envy of Western Virginia. And I look forward to great things in the future. It will not be an overnight thing, as good things usually aren't. But I'm so excited about this that I really want to commend council. Mayor Jeff Urban, who I know is here tonight, Vice Mayor Dale Burdette, Councilwoman Debbie Loudermilk, Councilman Shorty Wolf, Councilman Ben Nicely, and Town Manager Chuck Unroe. I think these folks deserve a resounding round of applause. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Bill Atherholt, who is probably the most dedicated and active VFW member that I have met in my life. So, Bill Atherholt.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Oh, yes. Okay. I've got 2 minutes to tell you about the banners that are on our street in Clifton Forge. And I'm going to give you a little bit of history and then tell you how you too can get a banner. This program has been going on for 6 years and started in White Sulphur Springs by a member of our post who lived out in that area. It then spread to Covington, and then it spread to here, and I volunteered to do this. And it's my pleasure to tell you that in those 3 cities, 2 cities and towns, and now including Iron Gate also, there are 850 banners in this area. We have 56 posted here in Clifton Forge with 4 on order. And I have the promise of a gentleman that spoke to me, he's here tonight. he's gonna get some for his parents. Right, Ron?
Yes,
Okay.
and her parents.
Okay. How do you get a banner? Well, it starts off at the town manager's office where you get an application. And in that application, excuse me, the information about the veteran that's going to be on that banner is right at the top, with a name and a rank, a date of service, a military branch, and where they served. Now they served, they don't have to serve in a wartime event, but here are your choices. Persian Gulf, Iraq, Afghanistan, Cold War, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, World War I, and peacetime. So it's the era that this person served in. So that lets all of our veterans be welcome to have a banner. The next area is the person who's doing this for the veteran, and I need their name and email and whatnot in case when they send me their application, there are questions that I have. The biggest problem we have is the rank of that person. Each service does it differently, but I know how to go to Google and figure out what the right rated and rank are. The problem we use an acronym there is because, quite frankly, it comes after the name, and if people have a real long first name, middle name, and last name, there's not a whole lot left up there for the rank. So I would recommend that you use just the first, middle, and last name for the veteran. Okay, then you would take that application, $200, checks made out to VFW Post 1033, back to Chuck's office, and Kayla will call me. Oh, and a picture of the veteran. Now that picture can be a little one or a big one. One lady brought me a 20 by 12, and it didn't fit on my computer, so I had to get a small one. But a little one, I've gotten a 4 by 4, and they come out very nicely. But you can scan them and send them to me, and that's because I will scan them and send them on. I'll probably use your scan, and it should be okay. When the banner comes in, it'll take about 3 weeks after I order it. When I get the information from Kyla, I will go through our gentleman who's been doing the purchasing for 6 years, and he makes an order up when we get between 10 and 20 names, and it goes in electronically, and it comes back in about 3 weeks. He divides it up between West Virginia, between Covington, between Clifton Forge. I go over and get my part and bring it back here to Public Works. And then Public Works puts it wherever the person who is doing this for the veteran has shown on here their preferred banner location. And a couple of things you have to watch out for before you can pick an area. Number one, there are now 56 less poles available. So you have to look around and see which pole you want. And you can see there's a lot of wires on these poles. There's one with 2, here's one with 1. The reason there's probably something on the right-hand side of that pole that won't prevent the second banner from being used. This is right at A Street up there, and we've got, I think there's 9 or 12 between C Street and A Street. And I think there's either 9 or 12 between Allegheny Journal and Jack Mason's Tavern. You'll notice that there are none in downtown. Anybody know why?
Poles are.
No poles downtown. Okay, I think I've covered everything. The banners are guaranteed by the company for 2 years. There is a bright sun that can hurt them, and you know what these winds can do. I have parts for the brackets that the person buys, so I can fix that if we have a wind problem. I want to thank Chuck for running this whole thing through Dominion to get permission to put these on their poles. And I want to thank Public Works for their diligence in putting these banners up on the pole. If you have any other questions, I will be hanging around for the next hour or so here and downstairs. Thank you very much.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Krista McConnell, the owner of the Five Sides building, to give us an update on the renovation of that facility.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try not to project. I want to step back so you're hard of hearing on your gal. So anyway, okay, we got this up here. So real quick, the fountain. I don't know if anybody noticed, the wall is fixed now. So now we're working on the mechanics of the fountain, and we hope to have that running by summer, right? Yeah, okay. So we're hoping to have that running by summer, so that should be happening again. Y'all see that the roof is being worked on right now. There's things flying everywhere, but we're working on that too. Five Sides is coming along. We have one logo aside from Five Sides, so I wanted to share this with everyone tonight. We're still looking at a summer opening, but still renovating. We're still working on setting up the shops. So I just thought I'd share the names of the shops with y'all tonight. So we have Hot Stuff, is the coffee shop. Hot coffee and donut shop. We have Wicked Wieners, the hot dog shop that's gonna use the pneumatic tube in the second drive-through. And then the Olive Oil is the olive oil and vinegar shop. That's the one that we have the logo for so far. And then the Wine and Cheese Vault. So the Wine and Cheese Vault might not happen this summer, but it will, hopefully by the end of the year we'll get to that one. But I just wanted to give y'all a quick update. We're still, like I said, we're still renovating. It's a time and money thing. Ron and I don't seem to have that much time. We just launched Dave and Steve March 3rd, the home repair and remodeling services. And we brought some swag. If anybody wants a keychain or a magnet or a card or a pen, we've got those. The keychains are kind of cool. They're bottle openers. But that's kind of gone off gangbusters. We've had quite a few calls and quite busy with that one. But lots of businesses in Five Sides, and hopefully we'll have these open this summer and have lots of traffic in there. So that's all we got.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to welcome Aaron Arnett now. Aaron has created economic development strategies and market studies for communities around the country. He has worked extensively on downtown master plans, comprehensive planning, tourism development, and marketing plans. Aaron has visited Clifton Forge several times and has always had a special feeling for our town and is eager to work with us. After his presentation, we will move to the underground for our next speaker. We have snacks, soft drinks, and water available, so when we head down, please grab something and quickly take a seat. Now, I'd like to welcome Aaron Arnett, partner in Almet Muldrow Creative Planning Firm.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Autumn. And Caleb, if you would go to the very first slide, that's the title slide, that would be helpful. Thank you, perfect. So again, I'm Aaron Arnett, and I work with Arnett Muldrow and Associates out of Greenville, South Carolina, and my company, I'm in South Carolina, as I just mentioned, but I'm always in Virginia. I'm doing work here constantly. I love this state from one side to the other. We work in small towns just like Clifton Forge, from one side of the state to the other. Most close to you all, I've worked in Fincastle with a superstar that's here in this room, which is Maria Saxton, which I think many of you all know, and the rest of y'all will know by the end of this evening. And we've just had the fortune of working here in this state. But as Autumn said, you know, I have been here in this town many times before, and every time I come here, I'm amazed. Y'all have done great things. You know, I look at your downtown footprint, and I just see these awesome, beautiful buildings on the outside. I see that you've got a really big downtown for a community that's kind of small, right? And then I see things like this building, again on the outside. I see your depots, which are beautiful, and then you come inside this theater, and it's just insane. I mean, you all should be commended for all the hard work y'all have done here, because you really do have a special community here in Clifton Forge. And so what I want to talk to you all tonight is about community branding. And what I'm going to describe tonight is, why a community might think about branding, what is branding, the elements of a community brand, messaging, brand extension and marketing tools, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A after this. So the next slide shows, really what is a brand. When you think about a brand, quite often we think about Apple computers, we think about Nike, we think about Coca-Cola. I mean, those are some of the brands that are known worldwide as the most, well-known brands. And so what is it? I mean, it's a promise that these corporations, these companies, these products make to their consumers. And that promise, it speaks to the unique values and the characteristics of that product. It's Nike, just do it. It's Coke is it. It's those things. And when we see those, we automatically, that brand has built equity over time to where we automatically know what it is and what it's about. Well, it's the same thing for a community. Like a shoe company like Nike, like a computer company like Apple, a community brand really communicates that value and those assets that a community has. And it tells that story to its market, its consumers. It's more complex than a product because there's much more layers to what a community is and who it serves. And one of the interesting things is here, we think about communities and places and destinations and all of that. Virginia has one of the most well-known brands in the entire country, and we all know that. Virginia's for Lovers has been used for a couple of decades, I think now, if not longer, and they've got loads of variations of that, all the way down to their Love Work signs that we see in communities all across the state of Virginia. And that's something you'll hear me say over and over again. This slide, the next couple of slides I'm going to show you are showing you logos. But a logo is not a brand. A brand is that feeling that you get when you are communicated to by that corporation or by that destination. And we'll talk a lot more about that. So the next slide really talks about why would we brand a community. So first thing is, everybody's doing it now. Other communities are branding themselves. The ones that aren't really need to step up to the table because they want to differentiate themselves from the other communities that they compete with. It's just like a shoe company again. We want to make sure that we position ourselves to tell our story, to make sure that we can connect with who our market is. So who is our market? We want to create a unified message that does really three things. The first thing it does is it builds local pride. We're communicating to the people that live in our community, the residents of Clifton Forge. The next thing we want to do is create something that's relevant to the visitors. Y'all have got so many assets and destinations in this community. I know that you all have a great visitor base, people that want to come and see your community. But it also has to be something that attracts new business or investment. So, when we think about Nike, their brand is looking at selling shoes. Well, your brand, there's different layers to that. It's communication, building local pride, it's external marketing, bringing people to come who want to visit our community, but it's also economic development. How do we communicate to businesses or investors that want to come into our community? And the last thing is, and you'll hear, again, I've already alluded to this, but you'll hear me say over and over again, a brand is not a logo. Ultimately, it's the equity you build in what that idea is, what that narrative is, what that logo is. And when a logo becomes a brand is when we build that toolbox of messaging and strategies to be able to communicate and market the community to other people. So to our market. The next slide just kind of shows, and I know y'all can't see all these because there's a lot on here, but these are just some of the places where we've worked in the state of Virginia, and we've developed brand systems for, and you see all these individual logos, and if you look here, if you pause and look, you'll see a number of places that are very close to you all. And again, it's not just a logo, it's that system. So the next slide goes into community identity as a whole. And the first thing is, next slide shows what we see in your community. So these are some of the graphics that we've pulled. We're obviously sitting right here in the historic Masonic Theater, which is amazing. Of course, I've already talked about that. But when you have any community, you have all these different brands that are being put out there into the market. We have our local identities, where we've got the town of Clifton Forge, we've got Clifton Forge Main Street, we've got Visit Clifton Forge, and I think this is an older version of Clifton Forge Main Street on the right. But that's our local identities. Then we have our destinations, and of course, as I mentioned, we're here in the Lodge, we've got the School of the Arts, we've got our regional trails and blueways, we've got the Arts and Crafts Center, we've got the Railroad Historical Society, and I know there's others because a lot of the businesses that you all have here, which are awesome, are also destinations in and of themselves, and they have their own identities, as we just saw previously in the speaker before. Then we have these regional identities too, like Allegheny Highlands, the Allegheny Foundation, our Arts Council, and the county as well. And what you see up here is really just some of those messages and those graphics that are being sent out into the community. And when we're thinking about a community brand, when we're thinking about telling our story as Clifton Forge, we want to look to these things. The main thing I want to mention here is you can see that these are varied. The graphics are different, the styles are different, the vibes are different, and that's great. And they absolutely can and should be unique, like what we see here on this particular slide. But when we're creating a new identity to market the place that is Clifton Forge, we want to, as best we can, try to find some connective tissue between these other identities to build something that will represent our community as a place. So really try to connect these dots between all these different assets that we have in these communities. That's the beginning of that platform of where that logo, that initial graphic starts to become a brand. So the next slide goes into one of the great analogy that we like to use is when we're talking about branding a community, we think about all those other identities we saw on the previous slide. We like to use the analogy of a university. So Virginia Tech, they have an academic identity. It's the official functions of the university, its academics. That's the message it represents, and that's what its market is. Then we've got our athletic identity, VT and the Hokies and all of that. You know, that represents really, for all intents and purposes, the marketing identity for the university. They're very distinct, and that's important because they have different targets and they have different messages, but they're tied together. Like I was saying from the previous slide, we want to find that connective tissue between all those identities that make a community special to try to bring that under the umbrella of the place identity. Well, in this case, you've got very similar graphics, you've got fonts, you've got very similar colors that connect the academics of the university to the sports and that marketing identity. And you know, I always like to use the analogy, you want to make sure that you know, when your sports team has a really bad year, it doesn't impact the, you know, the people that are trying to get into college, you know, the people that are applying to the school. And this is topical because I went to Clemson, and I don't know if you are following the NCAA tournament, but as I was driving up here, we had an incredibly embarrassing loss today in the NCAA tournament. So it's important because these have very distinct purposes. We want to tie them together, but we want to make sure that they're unique. And the same thing, the next slide shows a community. So this is one that's just down the road from you all, Bedford. So there on the left, we have the Bedford Town Seal, and on the right, we have the Bedford marketing brand for the community. We're going to make sure that Town Seal is on their official documentation. It's on the wall behind Town Council. You know, it's on any official communication that the town has to the citizenry, particularly if it's saying, hey, your sign's out of compliance, you need to make sure that it becomes in compliance. But then we have our marketing logo. That's what's talking about what makes our community special. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this. You all know Bedford. You may see this here in this brand, but we all know that Bedford is, you know, the home of the D-Day Museum, the Bedford Boys. They had more folks die in the Normandy invasion than per capita than anywhere in the country. So what we see here in that Bedford logo is we have the town of Bedford. We've got life, liberty, and happiness, which of course is a direct connection to Thomas Jefferson, who is, you know, has a large footprint there in that county. But also we have that medal there with the symbol above, the ribbon above the O, and the O makes up that medal. It's all about patriotism. Their story, their message is we own patriotism. That's who we are. You see it when you're down there and you see how they're interpreting the Bedford Boys and D-Day Museum and their message. And then that's reflected here in this brand. So again, we've got our governmental identity, represents the official functions of the town, and then we've got our marketing identity that represents why we are such an awesome and cool place. That's how we approach community branding in everywhere we work. So the next slide goes into what are the elements of a brand. Again, it's not just a logo. It starts there, but it's not just a logo. So there's a number of different pieces to that puzzle. The first thing is, before you would ever get into a graphic, is what is our story? You know, again, in Bedford, it's about patriotism. It's about the Bedford Boys. What is our message that we want to convey to our numerous markets? The next thing is, okay, how do we interpret that with a graphic identity? So that's when the logo comes in. That's when we talk about typeface and color palette and icons and the whole 9 yards that you might see in a logo. And the last piece is a tagline. That's that message, that's that short little phrase that really reflects that market position statement, and that's who we are. Here's the biggest thing in the world about community branding, and we see this quite a bit when communities are actually trying to promote themselves. You cannot tell everything that's important and cool and unique about a place in a singular graphic. It's impossible. If a community tries to, and many have, put that entire story in the graphic, you're trying to tell everything and it gets so jumbled that you're actually telling nothing at all. What you ultimately want to do is just create that platform, get that foot in the door to where you can start telling that larger story. So the next slide really kind of begins to, I talked about all those different elements, starting with the brand market position statement, that brand narrative. And I'm going to just kind of go through these different elements in some other communities where we've worked. And hopefully, I think most of these, if not all of these, are from Virginia. There's probably a couple of other examples. But most of these places you should be familiar with. And the first thing, as I mentioned, is that market position, that brand statement. And that's that story that we're telling about the place. And the analogy I like to use is that elevator speech. If you're in California and someone says, hey, you're on the elevator, and someone says, hey, where are you from? And you say, I'm from Clifton Forge. And you say, well, I've never heard of that place. Tell me a little bit about it. This would be that elevator speech. This would be that narrative. So what I'm going to share with you right here is from Stanton, Virginia. And I promise you this is the last slide, or really the only slide that has a ton of wording on it, but I want to share it with you because I think it might build in your mind's eye what you know about Stanton as a place. So, if you like a place where a thriving city sets its grid into the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, if you like striking views, spires and domes, and hilly streets, if you like a city of history where restored buildings house hip restaurants, shops, and galleries, if you like the plays of Shakespeare or sustainable architecture, you all probably know, if you're familiar with Stanton, the Great American Shakespeare Center is there in Stanton. It's a major destination. If you like a place where folks swap tips on how to restore historic homes and where the people take to the streets to celebrate. If you like a place where the independent spirit thrives in gifted artists and musicians and where the solitude of the mountains is just a short drive away. I mean, a lot of this could describe Clifton Forge, right? If you like a place of learning where colleges and schools inspire our youth, if you like a place where high tech meets down home, we are that place, the Queen City of the Shenandoah, where the spires of the city are our crown. We are Stanton, Virginia, as you like it. So again, that builds the message, but it also builds that creative that goes into building the brand graphics as well. So the next slide shows the Stanton logo. And there's 4 pieces of that narrative that fit into this. The first thing is, we all know this, we're in Virginia, we all know how to pronounce Stanton, right? But I've worked in Virginia long enough to know that I have to ask how communities pronounce before I actually, verbalize the words in the communities. It's not Staunton, it's Stanton. It's not Fries, it's Freeze. It's not Pulaski, it's Pulaski. I know that. I know how to do that. But part of this, we know that we're always not going to get everyone the first time they see the word Stanton to pronounce it correctly. But by highlighting that U, we get our foot in the door again to tell that story. So that's one. The second thing is the crown above the U. They're known as the Queen City of the Shenandoah, and they're a very historic community, just like you all are. Again, I know you all are familiar with Stanton, but their graphic and their vibe in that community led us to do something that was a bit more contemporary. And you see that contemporary icon of the crown above the U that represents the Queen City of the Shenandoah. The next 2 things are about the tagline. Again, I mentioned that we know that the Great American Shakespeare Center is there in town. As You Like It is one of his famous plays, but more importantly, in Stanton, you really choose your own adventure in that town. There's so many different layers to the onion that is Stanton, and even within those different layers, there's different aspects of that community. And you as a business owner, or you as a resident, or you as a visitor, again, you create your own adventure there. So Stanton, Virginia, as you like it, was that tagline and that brand identity, which is the foundation of the larger system. So the next slide goes into brand extension. And then we see on the next slide some examples again from Stanton. So we showed that overarching community brand identity, that logo. And I talked about how that reflected the marketing message from a creative standpoint. But then the first thing that we do whenever we do branding is, once we create that logo, how do we grow it? How do we start to build equity in what that is, what that message is, what that graphic is? So we look at other things that exist in the community. And again, we want to make sure, and this goes back to the Clifton Forge slide that I was showing you before, everything needs to be unique. But as best we can, if we find that common creative tissue that links all of them together, it builds equity in the system. So from the city of Stanton, all we did is we took the colors and the font from the previous slide, and then we applied it to their existing city seal, their city crest that we have there. They have an arts district there, and again, you see that. They've got, much like you have a Main Street organization here, they have one in Stanton that's called the Stanton Downtown Development Organization, and we created a unique graphic for them. We have a unique graphic business, as you like it, specifically for economic development. So again, all of these pieces of this puzzle are unique, but they're all connected together. That's when we're starting to build a brand. So the next slide kind of just shows an example from another community, which I think is somewhat relevant to you all. You are incredibly historic, like a Stanton, but you're also got all these wonderful outdoor recreation resources in your community and outside your community. And I say outside of community because your story about Clifton Forge does not end at the town boundaries. Your story goes much farther than that. And a lot of experiences, a lot of places, a lot of destinations that feel like they're part of Clifton Forge, or that the visitors who are coming to this area feel like is part of Clifton Forge. That story might be outside of your town limits, and that's okay. So anyway, this is one that's focused on outdoor recreation. This is rural county, much like this area in the far western corner of North Carolina, and that's Graham County. And you can kind of get that vibe here with their county tourism brand there in the middle, and with Fontana Dam, Robbinsville here with their communities that exist within that area. You get that vibe of that 50s era, national parks look to those graphics. That was very intentional because in that community they've got a lot of federal lands, they've got a lot of destinations that really have that vibe to it. So every community's got a different story. Every community's going to have a different character that you want to convey. So the next slide really takes that really to the largest piece of branding a community, and that's how we take this message, how we take this graphic, this initial logo, and how do we start to tell our larger story. So when we go to the next slide, we see Stanton again. Not every community has a visitor-focused, focus of what the story is they're trying to tell, but Stanton absolutely does. So one of the things that we help them with is showing how they could, through their digital tools, really create this visitor vibe and tell this visitor destination story in their community. Next slide. This is Newberry, South Carolina, and I'm sure no one in this room knows anything about Newberry, South Carolina, but it's outside of Columbia. Really cool historic town. Really the biggest asset there in their community is this opera house that it's been a million different uses over the years, but ultimately the town transitioned it from town hall into, again, a beautiful performing arts center, just like what we're standing in right here. And when you go throughout the state of South Carolina, they think Newberry Opera House. The first thing that comes to their mind, Newberry Opera House. But what we were trying to show them is, give them marketing tools to say, we're much more than the Opera House. And this is part of a series of tools that we created for them. In this case, it's about the arts. We're much more than just that beautiful building, the Opera House. We've got this great and growing arts community there in our place. And this particular brochure is one that we recommended to them that they developed, that if you're driving back down into South Carolina, you stop at one of the welcome centers, you can pull a brochure that talks about all the arts events and all the arts destinations in the community. So in their case, their story was about the arts. Next slide. This is down the road in Henry County. And this was a project that we did with Hill Studio for the Smith River Small Towns years ago. And what their story was is about the history and the heritage of all these really small and unique mill towns that they had along the Smith River there in Henry County. You know, it's Bassett, it's Fielddale, it's Kohler, it's those unique places that you have there. And really, what we're showing here is some brochures and some graphics that help tell that story about the place. A very historic focus. Next slide. Back to Graham County, it's about outdoors. They were already creating a regional map of all the outdoor destinations that they had in the community. All we did was design this cover here on the right, your natural destination for all those natural resources and natural experiences that you have in the community. The next slide. This is Clinch River Valley back in Virginia. You know, and again, this is all about natural beauty and the outdoors and these small towns that you have all along the Clinch. And, you know, starting in Tazewell and going all the way down, really down to Gate City. I mean, there's probably a dozen little towns there along the Clinch River that are part of the story that's about the Clinch River Valley. These are ads that we created for them, and they are intentionally graphic intensive. We always kind of like to use limited copy, if at all, and in this case, we just have a few taglines here and there about the place, but it's all these graphics, all these special experiences that you have all throughout that Clinch River Valley, from farmers markets to river rafting to these great swinging bridges to all these old historic buildings that you have there in the community. And again, you say so much with these graphics, these ads, that you can deploy really on social media in particular, but you can also put them in regional and statewide media as well. But they're so powerful to say, this is the experience that you're gonna have in this place. Y'all could do 1 million of these in this cool town, right here. Big graphics, quick tagline that builds off of the initial tagline that says, this is why we, Clifton Forge, are awesome. Next slide, some other ads. This is Buford. In fact, someone I was talking about earlier, you know, y'all have done some good things. Y'all have won some awards for doing these good things in this community. It's absolutely okay to pat yourself on the back. Whenever you get an accolade, let's celebrate that. This is Buford, South Carolina, and they won all these great awards or your accolades, the best small towns, or top 15 small city or arts destinations, or top 50 adventure towns. You know what? I know we all don't like to, you know, brag on ourselves, but when we're talking about marketing our place, we absolutely should. There's a lot of hard work that you all have done to bring these accolades into your community. Let's tell that story to people on the outside so they will come into our community as well. Next slide. It's also economic development. This is Chatham, not Virginia, this is Chatham County, North Carolina. The project we worked on there was all about economic development. So you can see with these pieces with the logos as well as the, you know, kind of some of the brochures and the ads, it was all talking about economic development, economic investment, whether it's you know, talking about individual businesses, and in this case, the hospital that they have there in the community, innovation in technology and agriculture, or testimonial ads. I mean, all of these are super relevant to people that want to come and invest in your community. This stuff is easy. This is not rocket science. You just have to put those pieces of the puzzle together in your larger branding strategy to tell your story to the community. So the next slide goes into, again, another one in Norton, not too far, well, sort of, you know, still in Southwest Virginia, but it's a ways from us. But again, it's all about outdoor adventure. And you can see their tagline really focuses on that. It's get outside in Norton. But also playing off of that tagline, you could talk about camping in Norton. You can talk about biking or shopping in Norton. You can talk about get outfitted in Norton. We love to put together taglines that are, you know, that are flexible, that you can grow to grow that story and that message about the place. But in Norton's case, whether we're talking about outdoor recreation, or we're talking about downtown dining, or we're talking about biking and shopping, or we're talking about the downtown outfitters, it's all built on that message of outdoor recreation in the community. So the next slide shifts from marketing, advertising, to environmental graphics. You all have some great signage, by the way, here in your community. I think I have another slide that shows that. Some communities where we've worked have taken it to the next level. All of these are in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is another kind of mountain town in North Carolina near Asheville. And you can see we love to create logos that have an icon that can be separated from the name of the community and used independently by itself as you build that brand equity. When people see that H logo, they'll know that H icon, they'll know that's about Hendersonville. Well, in Hendersonville's case, they put it in their downtown street furniture. They put it in their wayfinding signs. They put it in their gateway signs. They even put it in their tree grates that they have in downtown. Never worked in a community that has gone to this level with environmental graphics, but it really shows how, again, that logo grows into a true brand as you apply this icon throughout sort of that built environment. Next slide is something more conventional that you see. These are various places from where we've worked. Brookneal in Virginia, put it on your water tower. Statesville, North Carolina, on their tennis courts. Certainly vehicle graphics that you see. You want to make sure that your brand identity occurs in the places where it needs to occur. And incidentally, particularly in Clinton, North Carolina, that particular one, that is their police vehicles. Their tagline, perfect place to serve, is a playoff of their tagline, perfect place to live. Their seal, which does connect to their marketing brand for the place, but it's official government function, city police. So it has that identity there, that city seal for Clinton, North Carolina. Again, that's how that connective tissue between the place and the government exists. Next slide takes that a step further. You've already done this in your community. You can grow this. We talked about banners already here in tonight's presentation, but whenever we can, use banners strategically to solidify our brand, our message, and certainly wayfinding, which you've done here in the community, and gateway signs as well. That's a really strong way to grow your brand. This is frankly not the banners, but the signs themselves. And the next slide, which is a gateway sign, not too far away from you all in Bedford. These are expensive. This is expensive stuff here. These are often a longer term strategy because we have to find funding for it, whereas everything else I've shown before this is either cost a very little amount of money or cost $0 to implement it. But in Bedford, again, you see that logo there. You see the Peaks of Otter there in the gateway sign itself. This one could not be more strategically located with the actual Peaks of Otter in the background. And so it's kind of crazy. You see the logo and then you see, you know, the inspiration for the logo right there in the background. But these are big things. These are very expensive things, but it's still all part of that long-term brand identity and messaging. So next slide, merchandising too. We did a regional Southwest Virginia brand that really starts probably in Franklin County, Montgomery County, and then goes to the west from there. So it doesn't get this far. But that was a regional brand that was done before. Different side of Virginia was that particular tagline. But one of the big ways that they regionally have deployed their brand is through merchandising. If you go to, I want to say Hartwood, but it's the Southwest Virginia Cultural Heritage Center now. You can buy all these wonderful products. You go and have a great experience in Southwest Virginia. You can buy a product to to where you can take that home with you. And it might be a water bottle, got great cycling in that area. It might be a cycling jersey or a t-shirt. One of the things that we love to encourage our communities we work in to do is, let's look at a brand as being open source. We're doing this to communicate what's awesome about a place. Well, where's the front line of where residents and visitors interact with our community? It's in our restaurants. It's in our local businesses. It's in our destinations. When you go through a branding process, what we would do to encourage, to recommend to you is say, let's let this be open source. Let's allow our businesses to use this. Yes, there will be agreements, there will be management of the brand. That's very, very important whenever you're talking about branding. But, for example, let's buy these t-shirts that have a logo on it that says the town of Clifton Forge and the community of Clifton Forge. And let's allow our businesses to buy that from the town at cost, but sell it for a profit. They make the profit, but they're also, again, they're the front lines of that great experience that people are having in your community. And people, when they go into those different destinations and those different businesses, can purchase something and take a little piece of Clifton Forge home with them to be a walking billboard when they're in another place. By the same token, our local businesses can benefit from this larger branding process. And the town itself, because they've given this to these businesses at cost, they're not out a single dime. It's a win-win-win all the way around, and it just works to build that brand equity. So next slide, and we're all almost done here. Last few slides are about really kind of growing the brand from that logo to a system. So the first one here is Bedford. We've already seen this. Again, a brand is not just that logo in the upper left. It's taking that logo, it's taking that brand message and that tagline of life, liberty, and happiness, and then starting to extend it to our town government. You see the logo that's reflected there in their town seal. Then also, we expand it into our events, whether it be the Christmas parade or their Pizza Vider 5K that they have. Then we look at our advertising that we have about the great arts in the community, or this Better in Bedford brochure that they've used to really position it as a great place to live or invest in, or things like water bottles or hats or their farmer's market. This is when that logo becomes a brand. The next one is, well, that's Southern Valley. This is a regional one we've done. This is down Danville, Martinsville area, and is specifically focused on agritourism and agribusinesses. And again, from logo to brand extension to advertisements to marketing, collateral, and signage, that's a brand system. That's not just a logo. And then the last one there is Damascus. Again, I'm sure y'all are all familiar with Damascus. I know it's several counties away from us, but it's such a great place and it's such a great destination. But from their initial logo to their events, to their ads, to their passport that's supporting local businesses, to wayfinding and signage and all of that, that's when a brand becomes a brand. That's when it becomes a system. And I think the last slide here, well, this is the one we did in a district in Martinsville, Fayette Street District. And you can see the same thing there with what I showed you with the previous slides. But with that, I'll stop talking and I will just open it up to you all if you have any questions at all of me. Yes?
I have a question. You said earlier that there were probably 1 million graphics that we could probably use in our community. How do you narrow that down so that that our logo is going to be memorable and versatile, and what is your process for that?
That's a great, that probably is one of the best questions I've ever had, I think, because especially when you talk about process, it's all about the process. Whenever we would come into a community and talk about branding, we don't even do anything creatively before we have as much community engagement as humanly possible. Because we can do all the research we can about a place, and I may have been in a place like Clifton Forge many, many times before, but I know I don't know everything there is to say about this community unless we have that conversation with you all. And, you know, the specific answer to your question, which is really an open-ended question, to be fair, is the fruit of that community discussion leads us to what not just that graphic is, but also what that message is, which will ultimately build out the brand system. What it is here, I don't know yet. Until you all have that community conversation, you wouldn't know. But I'll tell you, one of the things that we see all throughout Virginia, Central Virginia in particular, and Southwest Virginia, is every community has mountain logos. And that's awesome. I mean, we go out the store and I can look and I can see these beautiful vistas of all these great mountain peaks that we have, and the sun coming down, or in the morning the sun coming up behind these beautiful peaks. And that's an incredible image that you all get to enjoy every single day in your community. Now, by the same token, these other communities that surround you may already claim that. You know, they may already have graphics. You know, you may have the local plumber in your town that has a mountain logo for the local plumber. In fact, I'll say this, Arnett Muldrow, you wouldn't know this because it's a little bit subtle, but if you look at our logo, there's actually an A and an M in our logo that reflects the mountains of the north part of our county, you know, so we want to create something that's unique. So, to answer your question, what is it that's unique about your place? You know, it might be the arts. I know that you all have a robust arts community here in Clifton Forge. It might be history. You've got this incredible historic architecture here in this community. You know, you look at places like Bedford. Bedford has all these wonderful mountains, and we did reflect that in particularly the town seal with the Peaks of Otter. But really, their focus was about the patriotism and the Bedford boys and that whole story. So to answer your question, that community conversation will lead us down a path of what are the values and what are the assets of what makes this place special. And then we take that and we say, okay, how can we communicate this, but make sure we're doing it in a way that differentiates ourselves from these other places that might be within our, you know, sphere of influence. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Yes,
Aaron, excuse me.
there we go.
Yeah, we are going to have our questions and answers some more downstairs. If we can all move downstairs quickly, is that okay with you?
Fine with me.
But let's thank Aaron for that wonderful presentation of his.
Thank you all.
And then if everybody will run to the door and either go down the stairs or the elevator, we have treats downstairs for you to grab, something to drink and something to eat, courtesy of the town of Clifton Forge, and then we'll have Maria talk to us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before I graduated, my goal was to work right now.